May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Amen. Please be seated. Some of you know the Reverend Deacon James Bade, who served this parish with devotion for a long time prior to his passing. Sometimes during the week when he was preparing a sermon, I'd go, "Hey Jim, how's it going?" And he'd look at me with a very evil little grin and a twinkle in his eye and say, "Patrice, it's gonna be a barn burner." This one's for you, Jim. Who's your bad guy? Maybe he's the guy in the Oval Office who literally keeps you awake at night with worry about his army of ICE agents and National Guard units arresting people while government appointees work really hard to erase democracy. Or maybe you believe that this guy is the only thing standing between us and a cultural implosion because all the jobs have gone to Asia, everybody seems to be triggered by something or another these days, and the rates of marriage and childbirth, really important to a society, seem to be dropping like a rock. If you came up behind the baby boomers, we're a great target. Did you know that if you were born in 1942, you had a 92% chance of doing better economically than your parents? But now, about half of all adults say they're actually worse off than their parents. The share of wealth going to younger citizens, you see, has declined steadily since World War II because policy change after policy change has favored older people. And the frustration, anxiety, and anger of the young and even middle-aged is palpable. Stats tell me that homeownership is now out of reach, even for people making $100,000 a year. And there seems to be very little left of the American dream if you're under 60. Looks sort of like us older people ate it. Maybe the whole equity, diversity, and inclusion trend is a mystery. It is 2025 after all. Well, I was called for jury duty 2 years ago. City of Tempe with 20 legal people, all white, against one defendant, his two lawyers, and a couple of family members, all black. When I was interviewed by the prosecutor, you know, they always ask you, "Well, so tell me, what do you do?" And I said, one of the things I did was I was an Episcopal deacon. The guy asked me if I was on the bishop's anti-racism task force, and since I didn't exactly even know what that was at the time, I said no, but that I do believe that systemic racism is a problem. Me and my honesty. I watched, though, as he proved me right. Because a jury pool that was 40% people of color got weeded down to 12 white people, minus me. Black lives matter, blue lives matter, all lives matter. You pick your bumper sticker and I will pick mine. We live, you see, in a polarized culture of good guys and bad guys, and these beliefs thrive and are fed on a steady diet of personalized information. We pick out our news from so many options, but we pick the stuff that confirms our worst fears in a phenomena psychologists call confirmation bias. And we are prone to agreeing with our personal social networks, just kind of like we did in high school, in conformity bias. It's all leading to a lot of clicks because that is its purpose, making somebody a lot of money while it tears us apart. A recent study showed that about 63% of Americans now believe that we are so divided that it is not possible for us to solve our collective problems. One of my vows when I became your deacon was to bring the needs of the world to the church. And when I see 63% of Americans think we are hopeless, that is a need I put before us. The whole country, it seems, is in a state of moral outrage. Well, enter Jesus and his questionable contacts with the opposition. If you were a Jew in first century Israel around the time of this gospel, you lived in an occupied territory. The smart and maybe unethical prospered against adversity in the way people like this always do. And on the lower level of this ladder of shame was the role of the tax collector. The tax collector was a Jew who collected taxes for the Romans from his own people who were mostly destitute. The government, though, didn't pay them anything for this job. It was assumed that the employee would get whatever he needed out of the person he was taxing. So this is kind of a cross between the mafia and the bail bondsman, because if you didn't pay up, you were going to jail. Nobody was more despised. Nobody was a worse bad guy. And it was a system that helped the unscrupulous and heartless get really rich. The average Pharisee, on the other hand, had the ultimate moral high ground. Think of him as your average person in a collar. They go to school, they've learned a lot more about God than you do, devoted their lives to the study of the scriptures and to prayer. I mean, somebody you can look up to and model yourself after. It stands to reason if this person sees a collaborator praying in public, he sees the moral enemy. Anybody would agree. It's clear, finger pointed, verdict delivered. There could have been no greater divide than between these two men. But something odd always happens when Jesus shows up. And in this case, he refused to participate. He ate with these kind of people, had conversations with them, and seemed to see them not as some monolithic block of evil, but as individuals, as capable of good or bad as anybody else. He once met a really rich tax collector named Zacchaeus. And really rich would have meant he intimidated a lot of people out of a lot of money. Jesus says, Zacchaeus, I must come stay at your house today. And so Zacchaeus stood there stunned, because he knew the social order. And he goes, if I have defrauded anybody of anything, I'm going to pay it back 4 times over. Jesus' response was reconciliation. Today, salvation has come to this house. Let's look at what he didn't do. He didn't demand that Zacchaeus quit his disgusting job. He let the man decide for himself what integrity and generosity look like in his life, in his world, and accepted that as enough. So, my friends, which character are we? Are we the Pharisee or the tax collector? Maybe this passage is saying that the last thing the world needs right now is more judges. I think, though, in ways large and small, we deputized ourselves a long time ago. For instance, do your friends share your politics? When you sit together, do you slide into what's wrong with this country and who did it? Maybe, if we do this, we'd be better off focusing on kind of the harm we're doing with this behavior, because talking badly about the other guys with like-minded companions is one of the biggest sources of polarization, one of the biggest drivers of polarization in the country. And besides that, Jesus didn't do it. Why are we? Is it possible? Is it even possible that the neighbor who during election season puts out that ridiculously incomprehensible yard sign, is it possible that they may still be saved in God's eyes? Is it about how we actually act in our daily lives in our humility and our acceptance, our lack of judgments, rather than who we vote for, what we do for a living, or which news feeds we follow. Because every person has value, and we all care in this country. We just care about different things. Happy are the people whose hearts are set on the pilgrim's way, says the psalmist. Maybe the pilgrim's way includes a lot less judging and a lot more, I don't know. I don't have the answers, nor do my sources. But I'm interested in what you think. Tell me. Truth is a prism through which 100 points of legitimate light are thrown. We are designed to see harm in the shadows because our ancestors fought their way to the top of the food chain. Scanning for harm is built in. But the way we find harm these days, this circular hatred and better than attitude, it's not the way. It's not Jesus's way. When we set ourselves beside his life and beside the holiness of God, all that's left is to be the tax collector. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. We're thrown back on the one and only thing we really ought to have cared about anyway. Jesus talked to everybody, saw the humanity in everybody, and judged nobody. When we let go of our certainties and we listen to another person's story of harm that molded their views to be what they are, we honor their capacity for rationality and intelligence. We build the beginnings of a fragile bridge. So maybe we sit with somebody different than us, and we ask them what scares them about this world we share. Start with somebody easy, maybe somebody of a different generation, and you work your way up to the donkeys and the elephants. Check your news sources against the bias scale at allsides.com. That is allsides.com, because unless Reuters is your favorite, I can almost guarantee that what you're taking in is not neutral. It is supporting your pre-existing beliefs. And if something about the world really bothers you, take some actual action to help. Polarizing conversation isn't it. I can guarantee you that they are in their churches, in their Facebook feed, on their pulpit right now, having the same disparaging conversations about us. It gets us nowhere. And to me, today's gospel is super clear about what we should be doing. God, my friends, is the master change maker, and we can be change makers, peacemakers, hope givers, and we can pray. To quote our Book of Common Prayer, we can pray that the Spirit may so move the hearts of the people of this land that barriers that divide us may crumble, suspicions disappear, and hatreds cease. When we love the way Jesus did, not seeing any wall too high to climb over, and remember that only the Lord is the judge, we can, at the end of our lives, agree with the Apostle Paul. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. I did at least one good thing in my life. When everybody else was out there throwing rocks, I stood in the middle of that field and sang a song of love. Amen.